The rhythm of healing, the octaves method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at a play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The octaves method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. I am KJ Alexander here with my co-host, Tonya Octave, and today we have a lot of important information to dive into. But before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and let Tonya tell a little bit more about herself and what this podcast is about.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tonya Octave, and we are going into Season 5 of Trauma and Social Work Podcasts, where we will be discussing and diving deep into my book called Heal the Mind, 7 Strategies Towards Mental Wellness, Happiness, and Success, Exploring Trauma, Mental Wellness, and Ways to Live a More Balanced Life. And before we begin, just a simple reminder that this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended for medical, psychological, mental health, or legal advice. Although I'm a licensed professional, this is not a formal type of treatment. We may talk about things like hypnosis and meditation and things that we would do in a therapeutic, from a therapeutic perspective, but it's not a form of treatment. For individual questions about your wellness, your happiness, and your success, please seek out a professional. And if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, do call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.
Great, awesome. That was amazing. So with that being said, I want to make sure I tell the audience, if you haven't already, follow this page on Spotify, YouTube, and any other platforms we post episodes on. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming episodes in the future. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. My name is KJ Alexander, and I'm here once again with Tonya Octave to discuss her book, Heal Thy Mind. And today we're going to be diving into a section of the book regarding compassion and gratitude, amongst other things. So I kind of wanted to start off this episode by reading a paragraph from the book. And this is on page 32 of the book. It says, compassion is a non judgmental awareness of how one understands themselves and others, the interactions between the two. There is a selfless acceptance of who you are and of who other people are. This is an understanding that people act and react in ways based on their survival abilities, knowledge base, and the psychological/emotional limitations. Working to destroy the ego and ideas about self importance and pride, you must see the truth in oneself and others and take care of yourself and others in a loving way. And I just thought that was a very well written paragraph. And I kind of wanted to ask you a few questions. Well, really, my first question, you talk about you must see the truth in oneself and others. So if I wonder if you can kind of talk about what do you mean by see the truth in oneself and others, because I believe it's easier to see the truth in oneself because you're with yourself every day. But kind of talk about the difference between seeing the truth in yourself and then seeing the truth in others.
I kind of see it a little opposite. I
Okay.
see it in terms of my
Really?
experience that, yeah, that people tend to see the truth in others more so because we're more judgmental. We're more likely to say things like, you're not being honest because the other day I heard you say this, or you're a hypocrite in terms of the relationship exchange. So we're more likely to see external factors. We're less likely to see the internal factors. And that's why I say and kind of describe relationships can be like that mirror. And that mirror is looking at you because they're going to say things about you like, why do you always have an attitude? Why are you angry? Why are you acting this way or that way? And then we don't like that. So the ego's like, we got to keep that in balance because that's the job of the ego, wants to keep it in balance. And when there's a potential threat, because that's the perception, is the potential threat that comes in and shocks the ego's like, nope, how can I keep it protected? That's when the defense mechanisms may come out, like projection. This isn't about me. This is all about you. This is about, or intellectualizing, well, you're just acting like this because of such and such and such and such. And so we will have these defense mechanisms that come out as a way to keep this organ, this manifestation of the body in balance, because that's the job of the ego. That doesn't always mean that there's going to be like this healing component. So when I say like the idea is ego, the ego kind of on the journey of wanting to heal yourself and getting to know yourself, it goes back to that ancient African proverb, know thyself, and that I describe it more as a journey in this lifetime, and that we're given different experiences in that journey to push us, hopefully, towards the direction so that we can know ourselves. And when there's that mirror that shows up in that relationship, our ego doesn't have this desire to want to protect us because it's not needed, right? And so that leads into this frame of compassion. And compassion is the ability to recognize suffering in others and to try to do things to alleviate that. And that may not be in practical means like giving money or going to a homeless shelter or donating things or feeding people who don't, have food. It could involve that, but it doesn't always involve that. It's really kind of knowing that the human condition is filled with suffering, that is the one thing that we are all interconnected and related with. And my suffering is no worse than anybody else's suffering. Um, it makes me think of very early on in my career as a therapist, and I was at a point where I was getting consultation, and I had a client who was relatively wealthy, and she was very stressed out and overwhelmed with life, and she was a top CEO of like a big firm. And one of the things that I struggled with is I couldn't see her suffering. I felt like, well, you have relationships, you have people and resources, you have access to knowledge. You have bills, and but the bills are minimal. We were talking about like paying for like your third mortgage and how difficult that was, or paying for both. Those weren't things that I was familiar with, so it was hard for me to relate, and I couldn't see that there was some suffering there, that and in a way like trauma. And what my when I was getting consultation, what the consultant had said to me, it is in the mind. So it's based on how that person is perceiving the situation. It's not about me perceiving their situation, but it's how they're perceiving. And she was in a place, she was activated in terms of her sympathetic nervous system. So she was in fight or flight more than she was in rest and digest, and she was being activated constantly. I couldn't see that. And so that's where the compassion comes in, to be able to take yourself out of someone else's experience, not see it through your own experience, and to see that we all are interconnected in this way, because the human condition is suffering. And I think of suffering as a path to healing, because we experience things, and although we have the label of calling it suffering, it is to push us towards some sort of growth, some sort of enlightenment, some sort of opportunity if we allow it to. Um, I even think of it as in terms of empathy, that compassion goes beyond empathy, because empathy is really understanding someone's emotional or feeling response or reaction to a situation, to include a desire to want to help or support. So it's even a little bit more depthness than being empathetic, uh, in order to demonstrate compassion. What do you think about that? And do you kind of does it kind of help in understanding the difference that we are all interrelated in that way?
Yeah, definitely. I think the way you explained it made a lot of sense. Like looking at life from other people's perspective is kind of like a superpower in a sense, because we get so trapped in and stuck in our own perspectives and our own way of life. We all have our own stuff going on, but to be able to kind of step outside of that and look at somebody else's life and what they're going through, no matter how big or small, and still have that compassion to say that I understand why this is bothering you or why you're suffering from this. And then once you do that, I believe that allows you to connect with the person on a deeper level, because now you're showing empathy to them and they feel like somebody can relate to what they're going through, even if you're not going through the same thing.
And even if you tease that out a little bit more, in terms of relating to their experience, there's the thought process that like you can have with, I used to be that person. So
Mm.
if I see someone on the street and there's clearly struggling with like an addiction, let's say like a drug addiction, I don't have to have a drug addiction or struggle with a drug addiction, but I know what it's like in terms of a human experience to get so wrapped up in the world, to be so uh, ignorant to how things are operating in the world, and to live in this way, in what I call like lost. I know what it's like to be lost. And the external part that we see is maybe the drug addiction, but there, that internal connection is, I know what it's like to be like that. I may not have taken that path, but that doesn't mean that my path was any better. I just learned some things along the way, and that person is also learning some things along the way. And it's kind of having an appreciation for the human condition, because we're all going through it together. Even if we're living in the United States and there's people in other parts of the world, we're still all going through it together. We are um, convinced of a particular way of thinking growing up in the US, especially with Western kind of concepts. But that doesn't mean that our way of thinking is better than people who grew up in the East with an Eastern frame, right? And so there's things that can be learned from that experience, and to know that I am in everybody, that my spirit exists in other people, and to actually be able to see that versus the empathy of I can feel your story and relate to you, and I can display empathy based on your struggle. I'm talking about, can you see yourself in that person, knowing that that could be you at any point?
Mm.
That's kind of like a deeper understanding of how compassion, how I experience compassion.
Okay. So from what I take from that is empathy is kind of just like the surface level of compassion, but there's a deeper level than just basic empathy as far as being able to really put yourself in a person's shoes. And honestly, I feel like that's a place that a lot of people don't necessarily want to go. I feel like maybe the base level empathy is like the furthest most people want to go, as far as just like, oh, I see what you're going through. I may be able to help, a few dollars here, or I may be able to, have a conversation every now and then. But most people don't truly want to put themselves in somebody else's life position, because it may be painful, it may be traumatic. But would you say that's the truest, a truer version of compassion, in your opinion?
I am in the person's shoes, not I'm putting myself in the
Okay.
person's shoes. I am in their shoes, and I can see how they're lived their life because I'm only a tenth of a degree away from that. Right. I just
Okay.
made maybe a different choice, but that makes me no better or worse than anything else. And we use things like in the analogy, like a drug addiction, but that doesn't mean that the person who is very popular in the music industry, like Taylor Swift, right? Like she's a very popular musician and artist. I can still understand her life struggles. I don't have to be that popular in order to get it. I still know because of the human conditions, I know a little bit more about the entertainment industry too, that there's some pain and suffering there. I know that she's having a hard time emotionally, and I don't even have to know her personally, but because of how the environment is structured, I know that we are all going through this all at the same time. It's manifested differently for some people. And the idea is to be able to like understand that level of compassion, so that if I meet Taylor Swift and I meet John, who is homeless and a drug addict, that my compassion for both is the same. I'm not influenced by Taylor Swift's um,
Celebrity.
high celebrity stuff, her money, her external beauty. I'm not necessarily influenced by that, and I'm not despised or disgusted by the person who's living on the street that might have a particular odor. That both of them, I'm displaying the equal amount of compassion because I know that it is the human experience we're all going through, and it's all manifested differently for us. It's a
Mm.
deeper level of emotional intelligence. And when you cultivate compassion, that's what you're cultivating within yourself, that emotional intelligence that is
Mm.
arising, having that greater level of self awareness and perspectives of other people.
Okay. So yeah, it sounds like more so your perspective is, no matter where a person's coming from, you can have two people from two totally different walks of life, socioeconomic backgrounds, whatever the case. And these two people are not that far away from each other as far as from a humanity perspective. And I think that's a very good perspective to have, definitely. So you talk about gratitude in the book, and I wanted to read this paragraph regarding that.
But
So,
before you get there, I had a
okay,
couple of more things to just share about compassion because
okay,
it is related to mental health and it can decrease in terms of levels of one's stress if the lack of compassion that we have for others. There's research that support that, and the more you demonstrate compassion towards everyone in our society, you know, it is, research tells us that it is likely that you are going to experience a happier life, and kind of in way of embracing that. And when I thought about it, I thought about compassion in my reflections before our talk, and I thought about how transformative it was and profound in terms of spiritual health and the connection that holds the key for our mental wellness. Compassion is at the core. It's more than just understanding someone's pain. It is a heartfelt desire to really want to alleviate it. And it asks us to step outside of ourselves and see the humanity in others and to act with these moments of kindness. But what makes compassion so essential is how deeply it can nourish the spirit. So when I think of like spiritual health, it isn't just confined to religion or faith. It's about finding meaning, finding purpose, and connection in our lives. Compassion is like the bridge that links us to something greater than ourselves. When we practice compassion, we cultivate this sense of interconnectedness, a reminder that we're not isolated beings, but part of this like larger part of human existence. That's why I said you don't treat anyone different. It's a human experience that we all have. And the spiritual connection is essential for mental wellness because research shows us that acts of compassion can reduce stress. It can combat anxiety. It can lower depression because compassion shifts the focus from this self critical view and inner turmoil to a mindset of love, to a mindset of service, and it starts to rewire our brains as it releases oxytocins in our body, which is the bonding hormone usually created when moms have their babies, but it's creating a sense of calm and joy. So it's something that we can create outside of having kids, but it's like a rebirthing in a way. It is, the beautiful thing of compassion is that it's like a two-way street. When we give compassion, we receive it. Kind of like in each other, in these moments, it nurtures our own inner peace and it helps us let go of this judgment towards others and towards ourselves. And I kind of think of it like as it is a care of our mental wellness. We must also nurture our spiritual health, and practicing compassion can ground us, can remind us of life's greater purpose, like love and connection and uplifting one another. Um, so I wanted to add that in terms of compassion. And then when I was looking at, some quotes, I found this particular quote from the Dalai Lama. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion.
hmm,
What
I
do you
see.
think about that?
I mean, yeah, it seems like compassion is definitely the way to go. Just based on that, but not only just that. That's a simplistic view, but I think what you said was interesting earlier. How you kind of shift the focus off yourself, and I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was interesting because that probably is the reason why a lot of people go through certain anxieties or different mental conditions because they're so focused on themselves and what they're going through. They kind of hyper fixate on it to the point to where they create more problems in their mind than there probably actually is in reality. So by exercising compassion, I can definitely see how shifting the focus onto somebody else and what they may want or they may need definitely can be beneficial to a person's mental health for sure.
So when you think about it, what could be, I thought like, well, what could be a practice that people can do that doesn't cost money, Although this practice may be difficult for us to do, but know that it's a practice. We didn't wake up like learning how to tie our shoes. We had to practice that, like, so these are things that we have to practice so that we can become the master of it. And the younger we are in terms of practicing it, the more of mastership we get in our lifetime with it. And one of the practices is I thought about is listening. So when you're engaging in a conversation with someone, make for sure that you're attentive. So maybe putting down your cell phones, removing distractions, turning off the TV, and being present and attentive when that person is speaking, and learning to listen with your ears, learning to listen with your body, and not always wanting to verbally give a response, but maybe some ideas in terms of the verbal responses are: tell me more, help me understand, I'm a little confused, how do these two things make sense, it seems like you might be struggling, I'm curious if you're doing anything that is helpful to you, is there anything that I can do that can be helpful to you? So really practicing these listening skills in an attentive way instead of trying to engage in conversations where there's all these distractions, that can demonstrate compassion. And we can do this when we're at a restaurant and the person who's serving us, right? We can do this at the gas station. We can do this with our families, the people who we say we love and we care, we want to spend time with, but yet we're not engaged in these kind of, meaningful conversations. We don't remember half of the stuff that they said. So think about compassion. We're in the new year of 2025 and thinking about ways that you can be more attentive in your interactions with others in these meaningful ways. What is something that you do in terms of your listening skills when you're engaged with people that makes you maybe more of a compassionate listener?
Well, I would say a big thing is just listening to, how do I say this? Listening to respond thoughtfully, not just to, give a response. Really paying attention to the details of what a person is saying. And then, just trying to see wherever I can apply my own personal help, I guess, for lack of a better word, to whatever the person is talking about or going through. But I mean, most of the time, people just want to talk, just to express themselves, and it's not even necessarily anything that needs to be done. It's just the act of talking itself is, it could be very beneficial for people just having a normal everyday conversation with a friend or whatever the case. But yeah, for me personally, I think that nobody wants to talk with somebody who they feel like isn't receptive to what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think just by just doing that, just by being receptive and being respectful to a person, no matter who they are or where they come from. Like I've had people on the street come up to me and ask me a question. Now I know where the question is going, probably about some money or something, but I'll still be respectful enough
Mm-hmm.
to say, "Well, what is your question?" And then in that
Mm-hmm.
regard, they could, when they do ask for the money, I can respectfully say, "No, I can't right now. Sorry." Instead of just being a person who just, ignores the person completely and just turns around and walk away. So I kind of look at it like that. Like every human deserves a basic level of
Mm.
compassion to some degree, and then anything extra needs to be earned, in my opinion.
Okay. So I think you're going to tap into a little bit about trust when you say a little extra needs to be earned.
Yeah.
But, kind of staying with like the compassion idea, right? Like, how can we be compassionate in relationships? And let's talk about intimate relationships. Boyfriend, girlfriends, boyfriend, boyfriend, girlfriend, girlfriends, however it manifests in physical form, because I still see it regardless. When people are interacting and they're in an intimate relationship with their partner, one partner may feel the other partner doesn't listen, right? Because the other partner is distracted in some way. So some of the times I will suggest, are there times for you to engage in meaningful conversations that is agreeable upon both people? I'll give you an example. Um, if I'm working with a couple and one couple is telling me a situation where she was driving, and let's say her girlfriend wanted to talk about the relationship, and the individual driving wasn't ready. She had to focus on the road. She was trying to read directions of where she was going, and her partner was like, well, this is so important. So those aren't good times to talk about things in terms of the relationship. You have a partner who is distracted by things and can't show up in a meaningful way. And so in a way, you set the relationship up for an argument. Like, you really are doing it to yourself. Essentially, what you learn is that you have to kind of be patient. A lot of times, when things come up in terms of our immediate feelings, we don't necessarily need to talk about them first. Maybe there's some internal processing that goes on. But what we could do is maybe schedule times. And maybe that's like a daily thing. Sometimes people need to kind of connect on a daily basis, and that's fine. Or a weekly basis. It's what the couple has decided, what is going to be that time for them to connect and be intentional about it. So then you come up with things like when we sit down on our Sunday afternoons for our weekly, intimate relationship mindset checkup, whatever you want to call it, that works for you. And that that you're intentional about what maybe are some ground rules. Like, maybe we're only going to limit this to 30 minutes. We don't want these things to be drawn out. And maybe we have some rules, like there's no name calling, that we're going to give each person an opportunity to talk, and then we're going to maybe share some comments and thoughts about that. So that it can be contained in a way that the couple can kind of work within that frame, so that it can be experienced as a positive thing. If not, then you're not going to want to keep doing it. If one person feels the other person is just yelling at them the whole time, they're not going to want to keep continuing these patterns. So these are things to kind of consider when you're thinking about relationships, how you can show up in this compassion and demonstrating compassion with the people that you say that you love and that you're in a relationship with, or that at least you care about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree with that 100%. So I want to talk about gratitude briefly.
Okay.
You had a section in your book, and I want to kind of read this to our audience briefly. So, gratitude is being thankful without the need or desire to repay or feel obligated. It removes judgment, worries, and doubts. You move towards enjoyment and happiness. Your heart is open, expressing thankfulness because you are receiving more than you desire. This is less about material stuff and more about the gifts of love. Others will be drawn to you, and your energy can influence them. Be grateful for things we take for granted, such as food, water, air, our bodies, our lungs, our ability to increase our knowledge, reading, math, science, walking, running, even the ability not to walk or run. It brings awareness that there is good in all things and an appreciation for self, others, and nature. So, once again, very, very well written. I kind of wanted to ask about the awareness aspect of it. And, awareness is something that we all kind of develop since the day we're born up until, wherever age we are at currently. And it's different for everybody. So when you talk about awareness, about oneself and about one's the nature around oneself, how does one develop a higher sense of awareness? And because that's the thing, like if you're not aware of your level of awareness, then you wouldn't even know if it could be higher or lower, if that makes any sense. So basically, my question is, how do you develop your awareness for somebody who may not spend too much time on the subject?
I think a part of what you're expressing is, are there some practical things to be more aware of what's going on? So,
Yeah. I just
mhm.
want to just to give more context. So, let's say you're a person who has average or a low awareness of just yourself. You go through life not really paying attention, kind of doing whatever. And
So, can
then,
you give me an example of how a person shows up with low awareness?
yeah, so let's say you have, for example, a person who, their whole life is just, go to work and go back. All they do is they sit at home all day, they watch, cable TV or whatever. And they may not be as healthy as a result of it. They don't really go out in nature. They don't really try new things. They're kind of stuck in a box in life, and they may be suffering from any type of mental health related issue because of it. But a lot of people live like that in a state of just complacency due to the fact they're not aware that there's a problem, or no one has brought it to an attention that there may be some things in their life they need to change that could benefit them. So if you're a person in that situation, and who may be watching this video, and you feel like you're kind of stuck in life, and you're not really sure why, it may have to do with your awareness of self and the world around you. So how does a person with not a lot of experience as far as like personal development and things like that, how does a person start to develop that awareness to get to a place to where they can be more receptive and accepting of nature and things around them and the world itself?
So, I was that person. I did
Okay.
operate and live in the world with lack of awareness. And it's the compassion part. Remember, we all are going through the same. So, we are all at some stage in our existence unaware of what's going on. And then it made me also kind of reflect on a type A personality, someone who is constantly busy, someone who is multitasking, putting all these things on their plate. And even when I think of things that I've read in the past and related it to this topic, I think of like the superwoman syndrome, which is a lot of not just necessarily experienced by women and can be experienced by men. It's just written more in terms of a feminine characteristic, why we're putting all these things on our plate. Everything is so overwhelming, and we're operating in the world as if we exist, but we're not even connected to the experience. It's like we're just going through it. And then one day we wake up and it's 10 years later. Right. And so when I think of like, how can you be aware? A part of that is when you're ready, then you'll know. Sometimes we have to go through these things in this intense way so that we can experience what we need to experience to push us towards the direction to slow down. However, what I see often happens for people is that will come with a disease state of the body. The body will start to get sick. And so, what forces people to slow down when they're operating is when they're sick, right? That can
Yeah.
be a broken bone, that can be a disease state, and now you have to get an operation, and that's going to force you. That can be a terminal illness, and so now you're scared, and you're looking for other things to try to do, to resolve this, terminal illness. So the body, like a machine, is only can take so long that the light bulb will run out, right? So if we're not aware of what is going on and we continue to live our lives in this fast-paced way without the proper rest and without the proper relaxation, yes, our body, it will show up and it will be manifested in our body. It'll be manifested in our how we interact with other people's in terms of our personality structure. So, what can we do? We can't do anything until the individual is aware to say that I no longer want to live this lifestyle, that I do know that there are some possibilities of other options. What are going to be some of the other options? So, it's up to that individual to say that they don't want to live like this, although sometimes the body will push them in that way. When I think about, this awareness and this idea of gratitude, gratitude is really about saying thank you. And it's also a part of like the mindset and seeing the thankfulness in the world is about recognizing that there is so much good in our lives, no matter how small it is. It is about appreciating people, appreciating moments, appreciating experiences, adding meaning and life to our own life experience, gratitude can be so powerful and it can shift the focus. It is a world filled with challenges and distractions, and it's easy to dwell on kind of like what's missing, what's wrong, what could be better. I don't like this, I don't like that. But gratitude can redirect that attention. Just think about what you're doing cognitively to shift when you move to a place of gracious appreciation of relationships, of opportunities, um, even seeing the beautiful things in the sunrise. I was just looking at the sun or the sound of laughter. Just, sometimes I don't go to parks that much now because I don't have little ones, but sometimes going to a park and just listening to the joy of kids just laughing, like that there's so much gratitude in terms of that, and it makes you overall feel better. It's profoundly beneficial to our mental health and our physical health. Um, and so for those people who are suffering, notice that the practice of gratitude, it can reduce your stress, which is related to heart rate variability, which is related to cortisol, which is that stress hormone. Like you can actually have some changes in the body by practicing gratitude. It can improve your sleep. It can improve relationships. Um, and I kind of talked about it rewires the brain and helps us kind of notice the positive than rather being stuck in these cycles of negativity, which is acidic. It's only as negativity is acidic to the thoughts, it's acidic to the body. And when you have acidity in the body, cancer thrives. When you have an alkaline body, when your thoughts are alkaline and you're demonstrating compassion and you're demonstrating and practicing gratitude and you're having alkaline thoughts, bringing food that is alkaline into the body, cancers can't survive, disease can't survive. And so that's why I always say the body, mind, and spirit are interconnected, and that this is a healing journey, that we're all have been born into this world in this frame of suffering. And do you want to continue suffering in this life, or do you want another path? And that's all I'm suggesting, is that there are some other options. Along this journey, you can move towards wellness and you don't have to be stuck in the suffering mindset.
Mm. Yes, very, very, very insightful. I appreciate you for sharing that with me and the audience. So we're coming to a close in this episode. Is there anything you wanted to add before you wrap up?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read the last part, which will conclude this part of the chapter. So loving unconditionally is acknowledging and accepting all parts of yourself and others, the good and the bad. This is a joyful state of appreciation and admiration, even interconnectedness with self, others, and nature. We are all interconnected with each other and to nature. You let go, allowing control to leave. It brings one into harmony, transforming anger into peace, fear into trust, insecurity into security. Loving unconditionally provides a good foundation for compassion, which will be discussed in Chapter 2, Compassion and Ego Health.
Awesome. Awesome. Definitely looking forward to it. And I want to once again thank our audience for tuning in. If you haven't watched any previous episodes, go ahead and go back and check out some of our previous episodes. And don't forget to leave a like on this video. And with that being said, that is all the time we have for today. Everyone, make sure to take care of yourself. Be safe. Until next time, peace out.
Wraps up another episode. I hope today's discussion provided clarity and tools you can use in your daily life. If you're ready to take the next step in the healing journey, I'd love to connect. Head over to my website to schedule a free 15-minute consultation. It is a great opportunity to ask questions and see how we can work together. And while you're there, download my complimentary workbook designed to help you reflect, grow, and move towards mental wellness, happiness, and success. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time. The rhythm of healing, the octaves method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at a play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The octaves method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.